And would you like us to share the screen? All right, fantastic. All right, let's share. Okay, so thank you guys so much for coming here today. We are hosting an implicit bias workshop to learn more about how our internal biases shape how we treat others and how we can shape our own internal bias so we can hopefully benefit those around us. All right.
So, let's start our webinar with a very quick question. If you saw these two people on the side and walking down opposite ends of the street, which side of the street would you go on? Don't answer out loud, but give yourself a moment to think. And then ask yourself why you made the choice you did. Is it possible that your reasons were based on some assumption or ideas? And if you think that's the case, then you kind of just proved your point.
Which brings us to our why. Why do we need implicit bias training? Because we all have implicit biases, and these biases cause us to take actions toward people, such as crossing the street, increasing our pace, avoiding eye contact. This can be even avoiding a neighbor because of their appearance. And the worst part is we are not even aware of doing this.
During today's training, we're going to be covering some key foundational information about implicit bias, just what it is, when it's formed, the science behind it, factors that influence it, and how we can combat it.
So let's take the next step in our journey by further discussing what is implicit bias. This slide explains to us what implicit bias is, and we want to highlight key three ideas. We want to highlight that implicit bias is an unfair belief about a group about a group of people or individuals, and that we are often unaware that we have this bias. We also have to stress that these biases can lead to automatic reactions that can be hurtful or harmful. It's essential to note that these beliefs and ideas can sometimes be received from other people or other social entities. And so it might not be a reflection of our own true hearts as much as it is a reflection of what we have been taught, what we've seen, or what we've been exposed to. So remember that while we may have all received some of these ideas from external sources, we all have the power to change our personal internal thoughts and behaviors. Something that's important to remember as we dive into this work, we know that our collab is committed to treating all people with honor and respect. And so that means we have to be brave enough to recognize when there might be things that hinder us from doing so, whether it's through personal or national beliefs or bias. In order to do that, we have to be brave because that bravery is going to help us to develop more positive mindsets. With that being said, let's dive in and let's look at some situations that we might be confronted with and think about how these automatic and implicit biases may work. As we go through each of these scenarios, we want you to feel free to use the chat to share thoughts or feelings or ideas that you might have about each scenario. Remember that this is a safe space where we're all learning together and we're helping one another grow. And if you're not comfortable sharing your thoughts right now, don't worry. Give yourself some time to honestly reflect and to explore internally some of the changes that you might want to make if you see yourself in one of these four situations. In situation number one, Thinking of instances where a person from the United States meets an individual with a Spanish last name and then assuming that he or she might be an immigrant. Do we see ourselves in those situations? Again, reflect and share if you feel comfortable. Secondly, when we have a Muslim colleague join a company and the workers there assume that she is aligned with an extremist group or is a quote unquote terrorist. Thinking about geographic bias, when we're introduced to someone from an African nation and assume that he or she is poor or lives without contemporary services such as electricity. And then lastly, when a woman applies for a job as a firefighter and her colleagues assume that she will not be able to do the job effectively. These are all instances where prior thoughts, behaviors, and exposures can lead to automatic ideas or beliefs that could then drive the actions that we undertake. And we're now going to look at how we can prevent and recognize those challenges. So it's essential to remember no action, whether positive or negative, is unimportant when we're doing this work. We have to challenge ourselves to avoid thinking, oh, that doesn't happen in my school or neighborhood or city, because sadly, it happens everywhere. But what that means is all of us have the power and can learn how to make a positive impact for a better outcome.
So now that we have established how subtle implicit bias can be, we have to wonder, where does it all start? Do we, as informed, educated people, begin to believe these stories about our local, national, and global peers? And the answer to the question is very, very young. Often as young as 3 to 5 years old, which highlights what we said earlier about some biases coming from others. We all grow up in specific environments that lay the foundations for our fundamental beliefs. And as a result, even toddlers have been observed to demonstrate biased behaviors. For example, social scientists have discovered some of the key ways implicit biases are established.
Quick, Annie, you still there?
Yeah. Sorry, my internet is like super bad, but okay, I'll just keep going with my camera off. Um, and they are also like presented in like social media outlets. So there are two very well-known studies that help develop these conclusions, and the first one is the Dole test in the USA, and the second one are facial activities in China. So for the first one, imagine you're a 5-year-old child. You're sitting in a quiet room at Columbia University, and in front of you are 4 dolls, exactly the same, except for one thing. 2 are white and 2 are black. A kind voice asks, which doll is a nice doll? Which doll is the bad doll? Which doll looks like you? So this is a reality in the 1940s when psychologist Dr. Kenneth and Mamie Clark conducted what became known as the doll test. Children just 8 to 7 years old consistently chose the white doll as pretty. And good. The black doll, often labeled ugly, dumb, bad. Even black children heartbreakingly associated negative traits with the doll that looked like them. So these findings reveal something deeply disturbing. The racial bias and internalized racism were already taking root in children barely out of preschool. The Clark's work would later become pivotal evidence in Brown v. Board of Education, the landmark Supreme Court case that ended legal segregation in schools. Now let's look at a study from China. Preschoolers were shown racially ambiguous faces with different expressions. When the faces looked angry, kids often said they were African. When the faces were happy, they were labeled Chinese. But here's the powerful part. One group of kids learned about African culture and their bias dropped.
Okay. We are so sorry for the tech difficulties. I can continue on just for a little bit. So in this test, toddlers in China were shown a mix of faces that were racially ambiguous between Chinese and African, and they were shown happy faces and angry faces. And even though there was an even mix both times of Chinese features and typically associated like African features, the kids who were Chinese always or typically chose the happy faces as Chinese and the angry faces as African. However, what was really cool about this test was when kids were taught about African culture, they stopped labeling African faces as angry and then Chinese. So they decreased their bias by educating themselves about other cultures. And that was really, really cool. And then if Anna comes back, we might be able to come back to the slide because she can explain it a lot better than I can. All right. But next, let's explore the neuroscience behind implicit bias. Though we have evolved to have implicit bias, the modern applications are much less useful. So here's just some behind the scenes information. Our amygdala, which is an almond-sized part of our brain, is largely in charge of fear and anxiety. It fires up and releases this burst of fear and stress when we see someone different or think of them as other. Our hippocampus remembers this experience and is able to make associations with past experiences where we remember when maybe we saw a show or we remember a family member telling us about a certain group of people, and then we associate that group of people with this fear stress response. And then we have our prefrontal cortex, and that is largely in charge of the decisions or the decision part of our brain. However, the amygdala and hippocampus actually develop before the prefrontal cortex. Our brains develop back to front. So that means that our implicit biases are developed before we're able to make rational decisions about whether or not these biases are justified. So what happens is our brain creates these shortcuts where as our neural pathways continue to be used and we associate this one group of people with this feeling of fear, it becomes an immediate response. We rely on these shortcuts in high stress situations where we don't have the time to use our prefrontal cortex to rationally think. So we have to rely on these high stress experiences, which can lead to violent responses. If you are in a high stress situation, and your automatic response is to be afraid of someone else, you will take actions that are negative. And this becomes a vicious cycle that can lead towards discrimination and very, very harmful behavior. And then another dangerous application of this is that we start to group people together and we don't value them for their uniqueness. We completely disregard it. And then one changing factor that has really affected implicit bias in a more modern context is social media, where we experience a lot of labeling. I know that I have fallen victim many times to identity quizzes, especially in large popular culture things like Harry Potter, where we start to label ourselves as like Slytherin and Gryffindor and Hufflepuff. We don't honor our own individuality and we start seeing people as groups rather than as humans. And that's really dangerous because it allows us to stereotype and it can lead to violence if we don't question these responses.
So everyone, we have explained that implicit bias does not develop in a vacuum. Instead, there are multiple factors that can work to worsen or lessen the negativity. Next slide, please. So you see here 6 of the most common influencers of implicit bias. While we cannot cover all of them, we will just discuss the 3 most powerful influencers. And while I'm talking about this, please think of like, did I experience these influences before? Or am I going to live this influencers in the future. So the first influencer is personal experiences. Personal experiences have considerable effect on implicit bias. Let me give you an example. When a woman treats you in a bad way, makes you feel another woman will treat you in that way too. This makes you avoid and discriminate women even if you're not aware of doing it or even if you're not want to do it. In addition to that, women and men might be against each other, which we do not want to happen. Another thing is media portrayals. We are living in technology, and social media influences implicit bias by reinforcing existing prejudices, spreading misinformation, increasing harmful stereotypes, and creating an environment for online harassment, especially among young people. Let me give you another example. For example, white people on television shows more than black people makes audience feel strange when they see a black person in their lives. Like they're thinking like, oh, is there any black actor even exists? And another way of illustration is even media can develop labeling among young people, especially under name of trends or humor. Another thing is upbringing. Every person carries their family's ideas, even if they do not wish to do it. Our family stereotypes and the type of living affects us as well. For example, someone born in high-income family might have stereotypes against low-income families because this type of living is unfamiliar to this person. In addition to that, this person can discriminate other people in their school. Another thing is, if a person's family has stereotypes against Chinese people, the kid of this family will have tendency to discriminate Chinese children. Even this kid might start finding new labels for Chinese students at school, a reflection of how early and casually stereotyping can begin.
So after hearing so much weighty information, you might begin to feel that implicit bias is this insurmountable challenge. But thankfully, it's not. We can challenge and undo implicit bias, both individually and collectively. So now we'll talk about the power we possess to change the world for good. Here you'll see some daily steps we can take to first undo our own implicit bias and then to work with others to pass along the positive change. If we all commit to at least one per day, we can begin to uproot the thinking that separates communities and begin planting positive concepts to help rebuild connections and develop healthy social relationships. Here are some strategies that you can use to implement that. So stereotype replacement, we can work to be more aware of assumptions about communities and replace them with more accurate and positive concepts. For example, instead of assuming that all people of East Asian descent are good at math and science, we can celebrate our friends' musical talents and their enjoy of the art. And for contact and individuating, you can make a new friend from a different background or a culture. Build one-on-one connections. It destroys negative perceptions. It also helps us to separate individuals and not just assume about the different groups that they're part of. Emotional regulation, which Caitlin touched upon earlier with our automotive responses, and it can lead to involuntary physical reactions like faster heart rates. Being aware of these reactions and the implicit bias that it triggers makes a new conscious decision to retrain our brain by just saying hello or waving to a new person that we see. And practicing mindfulness is also very important because this awareness allows us to redirect our automatic and unfounded responses to diverse communities. And last but certainly not least, listen. Being open and respectful to hearing someone else's perspective, insight, and experience really helps to destroy our own internal biases. And while implicit bias is definitely easier said than done to remove internally and definitely externally, there are still so many challenges. Lack of self-awareness of exhibiting implicit bias due to unconscious nature and makes it difficult to identify implicit bias People are often in denial and get very defensive about acknowledging implicit bias due to either discomfort or a drive to maintain a positive self-image of themselves. As a result, people often resist changing because they don't want to be seen as wrong or view themselves as wrong. And not everyone understands what implicit bias is, resulting in an inability to acknowledge or even respond effectively to it, which is why webinars and educational moments like these are so important. And implicit bias can present through societal norms and pressure, often making it difficult for people to challenge implicit bias, especially as Goche said, if it's the environment you were solely raised in and everyone around you has a similar bias.
Okay, so we did a lot of talking at you, so now we're going to do a Kahoot and see if you can identify and practice the knowledge that you just learned. So, if everyone can open a new tab and go to kahoot.it. Right. The code is 1910649. 1910649.
Can you put that in, can you put it in the chat?
Yes, I can. So here is this. All right.
My educator brain loves this. Like, Kahoots are fantastic for all age groups. I teach high schoolers and they live for this. It's like, we don't even really care about the lesson, just get to the Kahoot. So hopefully everyone is going to
Exactly.
enjoy this. It's great.
All right. Is everyone in? Okay. I'm going to start the Kahoot, and then hopefully anyone who wants to can join in, but they just might be a little bit behind. We'll see. All right. All right. Hey! Oh, you got it right. We did something correct. All right. Onwards. Right. Let's go. We got some of you with the all of the above. Yes. Okay. Yep, nice job. I mean, as you all know, it's going to be a lot more effective if we can address it in a kind and meaningful way rather than just complaining behind someone else's back about their biases. And it's honestly more important that we start addressing our own before we go and try to like seek out the problems in other people. Yeah, so the thing that we really want to highlight here is that with some of these ones, you are actively making the choice because of your prejudice instead of it being an internal or unconscious thing that you're not entirely aware of. Right. Yeah, there we go. All right, nice job. All right. All right, nice job. Another thing to remember, media, that is a prime influencer of implicit bias. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, there may have been a mishap while creating this because it should be a multiple choice select, but either way. All right, let's go. All right, just to address this, getting to know people from different social groups, that is the contact method. And then stereotype replacement is trying to create an alternate stereotype about someone when you notice that you are starting to put them into a box or a group. All right, nice job. All right, nice job. This one was a bit of a tricky one. There's obviously a couple different biases going on here. The main ones being typically when we think about computer engineers, a lot of us, I know that I fall into this category. We usually go to men or we associate men with STEM careers. That is often not the case, and there's lots of women in STEM. But when we perpetuate the stereotype, it makes it worse. So in this case, I don't really think that weight bias is present. You can fight me on that. We don't know the person's name, so that doesn't apply. And then religion bias, we don't know their religion either. So the most immediate option here would be gender because we see clearly that it's someone who is male presenting. And that likely means that this person associates men with the career of computer engineers. Okay, so this is just kind of a little thought. I thought that I was going to have like a little written response, but it might just be a slide. I just want you guys to think for a moment, what implicit biases might you have? And how does that impact your behavior towards other people?
I have a question. What's a halo effect?
Yeah. So I believe a halo effect would be you think of one group as holier or better than another. I know that I've fallen into this before where I believe that these one people are like, or like this one group of people, they're so nice and wonderful and like gorgeous and all the things. And unfortunately, as good as it is to like think highly of someone else, it also can ignore that they are human and that they're going to have faults if you're only seeing their good. And that can kind of be blinding.
Okay. The thing.
Thank you.
Quick observation about that, Kaylin. So Neva, what it also can do sometimes is cause individuals to diminish the needs of others. And so if there is the assumption that this particular group of people are always okay and they're always fine and whatever the case may be, we fail to see signs that might be connected to some of the things we talk about in the collabs, like their mental health or their well-being, because we've given them that halo effect.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for the great question. Yes, let's reduce inequality. Yeah. Nice job. These are all valid methods of challenging implicit bias. All right. Let's see. One. All right, let's go, Neva. Yes, Miss Wade.
Probably should not have logged in on here. So this is my egregiously competitive streak showing up. I'm sorry, Linda Starr. I apologize. I should not have. I'm so competitive.
So good, me.
Vicky,
Also, nice
it's
job,
okay.
Pragna.
Oh my gosh,
Ultimate.
that's Neva. Honestly, all of you guys, everybody that participated, I just love that, and I'm so proud of you. That was such a fantastic presentation. Really, really, really good. I'm so excited to like get this out there. So one thing is, I know it's over time, but I want to really give you feedback, and can we just ask people to give you feedback in the right now? Because this was their practice session and they're going to refine it. And I would love for them to like refine it so it's at a point where it's on our YouTube channel and we blast it out. And every one of you takes it to your schools and gets your schools to show it to your hundreds of students, like, you know, Goche in Turkey, to your entire auditorium of teens, you know. I would love, love, love that. And then afterwards, people break down into small groups and they have discussions about what they learned. So
And
I
then
just
we
am
do
really excited
have
about this and so proud of you guys.
we do have
Sorry,
a
Caitlin.
feedback
Oh, sorry.
form that I will put in the chat for you guys, so we can hopefully get some good feedback on this.
I just
And
put it in, Caitlin.
Oh, thank you.
Everyone, by the way, if you have questions, you can just ask it now, or you can ask it via Slack. Just message us about anything.
I would love it again if the teens in the collab could embrace this entire presentation, because it's central to everything we do at the collab. As I think Vicky alluded, everything we do is about our values that include kindness and respecting others and equality. Foundational value, equality, and you know, we need this now in the world more than ever. So we've got to get this out to our communities. And all of you as teens can play a role in helping us promote it in your own schools, your own religious institutions, or community centers, whatever. Really proud of you. Okay, I'm at Dollywood and the stereotypes here, I'll tell you. So I'm going to be challenging my assumptions. Okay. I have to jump out, but such a close the meeting.
Yeah, can we stop the recording?